Reidston, the Paleontologist of Mail. One of the first Winds of Exchange decks I opened, and an early top performer in my internal testing. However, its fate as a competitive deck has yet to be determined. The wonderful thing about Reidston is that it's a good token deck. It features Warrior, the Brobnar token, and as far as I can tell, it's always the correct decision to make as many warriors as possible, and that's great. None of this decision-making nonsense. And what's fun about token generating is that it's a form of efficiency in itself, I feel. If I'm going first and my opening hand contains a token generator from one of my non-Brobnar houses like Hire On or Recruit, then I can play this card, and then if I go Brobnar in my next turn, I already have a Brobnar creature out. So it's like you're playing a Brobnar card in a non-Brobnar turn. And this deck does have a couple of the main synergizing effects with Warrior, that being Looter Goblin and Brick Nasty. And I think it's especially important in Winds of Exchange to have duplicates of your good effects. So having two cards that give you boosts off of fighting is nice, although I think Brick Nasty is better because it gives you that effect the turn you play it rather than having to reap to get it. And the real champions of fighting in this Brobnar are the two Fire Spitters. These two, along with the Volca, just give so much extra damage from your fighting. It really lets you clear a board through fighting, and that's great. There's also a Might Club in here so that I can fight right away. And then I have a couple ways of making tokens so I can stay in Brobnar, make warriors while destroying my opponent's creatures. I have these two press gangs, and this enables you to stay in Brobnar turn after turn, because if you destroy one enemy creature and you have these things in your archives, you can make two warriors a turn. And this press gang is amazing. This damage helps you satisfy the condition to archive it, and it has a draw, so it helps you stay in Brobnar that much by letting you either build up your hand or draw into more Brobnar cards to play. Another thing about it is if you have an empty deck, you can reshuffle the deck and continue making tokens. I think this deck has another quality that's desirable in Winds of Exchange decks, and that being all of the houses generally contribute to the same game plan. And I think that applies most to Winds of Exchange because you're losing cards to tokenization, so it's hard to have just single cards that fulfill a role. You really need all the cards in your deck to contribute to your game plan, so no matter what you draw or what is tokenized, you're still good. I've already made a video about this guy, Tia Arhi Esquire. Each friendly non-token creature gains destroyed, make a token creature. The little synergies this has in this deck are fun. So when you destroy something with fresh marks, you get a token. If you destroy one of your own creatures with forced retirement, you get a token. And then the two big payoffs, mass buyouts. It turns out this can be really hard to get to work in your favor, but this is a great finisher if you're ahead on tempo. Now, the Saurian contributes very well to this sort of board rush plan in two ways. First off, we have this Adil Tulia, which says, each time you exalt a friendly non-token creature, make a token creature. And there's a bunch of ways in the Saurian to make tokens that way. Exalting with Faust, Paraguardian, Chancellor Dexterous, the Phalanx Strikes, which, by the way, are more powerful the more ahead you are. So this deck has a sort of snowballing effect where if it has a big board, it's going to be crushing with its Phalanx Strikes and such. But if it's behind on board, it's going to be struggling to win it back because the Phalanx Strikes aren't very powerful. But it has a second recruit in here. And so with all these exalting effects, you have another pair of cards that you can play turn after turn, generating warriors, getting ready for your big Brobnar turn. The Saurian's other contribution to the rush plan is Epic Poem. So all those exalting effects, it's pretty easy to get a few amber off of this. And if you're lucky, you can combine it with the other big capture effects, like we have Double Praetor Marius and Shrewd Investor. There's one more piece of amber control that we'll see later, but this is mainly it. Capturing This just emphasizes how much this deck needs to win by tempo and getting ahead on board. Well, there is a gem code vendor in here, but the chance you get to use that is pretty low. Just of note, it does have Scrap Scrounger Ornate Talking Tray, but that's another combo you're not going to see come together too often. This card is interesting. Yet another tempo-based play. So this card I feel like you don't actually want to steal a lot with. Because if you're not at the end of the game and you steal a bunch of amber and give them a huge hand, the chance that they can come back from that is highly likely. And while you gained a huge advantage in the short term, you may have just thrown away your chances long term. So this card, I feel like if you steal 1 or 2, then you're good. So yeah, a deck that likes to get the board really fast, fight the opponent's stuff down, and then mass buyouts for all the gains at the end. It can be pretty fragile, but it continues to push an advantage through the game if you get your token generators in the archives. Can decks like this survive in the meta long term? As Winds of Exchange just pushes creature control to be ever more important. Perhaps some more experimenting is in order.